Have you ever found yourself seething with anger over a single word, a careless glance, or a passive-aggressive remark that clung to your mind like a thorn in your skin? You walk away from the encounter, but it stays with it looping, festering, echoing in your head long after the person is gone. And then you ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? If you've ever asked that question, you're not alone. The truth is, in our hyper-connected, overstimulated, emotionally reactive world, the ability to remain undisturbed, to not be bothered or angered by others feels less like a skill and more like a superpower. But it's not. It's a discipline. A deep, psychological reorientation. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, knew this long before smartphones or social media ever existed. Jung wasn't merely interested in surface behavior. He dove straight into the undercurrents of the human soul. He believed that what angers us and others often reveals the unhealed wounds within ourselves. Everything that irritates us about others, he wrote, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In other words, when you're triggered, you're being given a mirror. But we don't like mirrors. We prefer enemies. It's easier to believe someone else is toxic than to admit they've touched something sensitive in us. And so, we go on getting disturbed, week after week, year after year, mistaking emotional reactivity for strength and unresolved trauma for truth. But what if we could learn to see things differently? What if you could look at the people who tried to provoke you and feel nothing but calm? Not fake calm, not forced I don't care coolness, but genuine, deep, inner peace. What if you could walk through a chaotic world without absorbing its poison? This journey isn't about becoming emotionally numb or detached. It's about becoming conscious. It's about learning to master your inner world so that no one else can. And that mastery, Jung believed, begins when you stop projecting. When you stop blaming others for the storm and instead ask, why is there a storm inside me in the first place? Throughout history, from Stoic philosophers in ancient Rome to Sufi mystics wandering the deserts of Persia, wise men and women have sought this same liberation, the art of unbothered living, of emotional freedom. Today, through the lens of Jungian psychology, we revisit that age-old question not with cold theory, but with warmth, humanity, and real-world tools that anyone can apply. Because, in the end, the most powerful person in the room is never the loudest, it's the one who is not disturbed. To understand how not to be bothered or angered by others, we must first understand how anger, the human tendency to project it, has existed throughout time. Long before Carl Jung walked the snow-covered streets of Zurich, ancient thinkers had already begun asking a similar question. Why do we suffer because of others? And more importantly, how do we stop? In ancient Greece, the Stoic philosophers Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca taught that external events are not what disturb us. It is our judgment of those events that causes pain. You have power over your mind, Marcus Aurelius wrote, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The Stoics believed that peace is not the absence of chaos, but the ability to remain unmoved within it. For them, this was not just a lofty idea, it was a daily discipline. Every time someone insulted them, challenged them, provoked them, they saw it as an opportunity to sharpen their inner stillness. Centuries later, in the Sufi tradition, the mystics of Islam echoed a similar sentiment. Rumi, the Persian poet and mystic, wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." Sufis believed that emotional disturbance was not something to avoid, but something to transform. If someone made you angry, it was not a cursing. It was a teacher sent to awaken you to something you had yet to understand about yourself. Where the Stoics used reason to master emotion, the Sufis used love and surrender. Meanwhile, in the East, Buddhist philosophy taught that attachment to ego, the false sense of I, is what gives rise to anger. Skutstins, the Buddha spoke of the three poisons of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. Anger, in his view, was not something to be indulged or repressed, but something to be understood as a symptom of deeper ignorance. He taught people to observe their feelings without becoming enslaved by them, to witness the emotion like clouds passing through a clear sky. So where does Jung come into this picture? Jung, born in 1875, arrived at a time when psychology was still in its infancy. He took the inner teachings of these ancient traditions and brought them into the language of modern psychology. Instead of gods and demons, he spoke of archetypes. Instead of karma, he spoke of the shadow. The message remained the same. What disturbs you externally is often rooted in something unresolved internally. Jung's contribution was groundbreaking because he merged science with spirit. He didn't just want to fix the symptom, he wanted to understand the soul. He observed that much of our anger toward others is projection and defense mechanism in which we cast our own denied feelings onto others. If a man represses his own aggression, he will see aggression in everyone around him. If a woman hides her own ambition, she may resent it in others. The outside world becomes a screen, and our unconscious wounds the film. But Jung didn't stop at diagnosis. He proposed something radical, that through a process he called individuation, we could become whole. We could retrieve the broken, hidden parts of ourselves, our fears, insecurities, desires, and integrate them into consciousness. Only then could we stop being emotionally hijacked by others. Only then could we respond to life instead of reacting to it. So you see, this problem, being disturbed, being angered by people's, not a new one. It has been humanity's silent struggle since the dawn of civilization. From Roman emperors to Sufi dervishes to modern therapists, the wisest among us have always known the enemy is not the world. The battlefield is within, and if we dare to step into it, not to fight, but to understand, we begin to unlock the rarest kind of power, emotional sovereignty. Let's now walk deeper into the psychological machinery that causes us to get angry, offended, or emotionally shaken by others. Ancient traditions offered wisdom through parables and spiritual metaphors. Modern psychology has given us detailed maps of the human mind. And yet, even with all this knowledge, the emotional triggers remain. Why? One of the most important concepts Carl Jung introduced was the shadow, the hidden, conscious part of our psyche that contains all the traits we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. This includes not just our shame, fear, and pain, but also suppressed strengths, impulses, and desires. When we see something in someone else that provokes us arrogance, laziness, cruelty, it's often because we've buried those traits within ourselves. Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, we will be ruled by it, and we will call it fate. Imagine it like this. Every time someone triggers you, they're unknowingly touching a part of your shadow. They are revealing something you haven't fully accepted within. The emotion you feel isn't about them, it's about you. The external person is merely a symbol, a mirror reflecting what's hidden. This is what Jung meant when he said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. It's not an accusation, it's an invitation to awareness. Contemporary psychology builds on this idea. In cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a concept called cognitive distortions, mental traps that make us interpret other people's actions through a distorted lens. For example, we might fall into personalization, believing that someone's behavior is directly about us, when in fact, it rarely is. Or we assume negative intent, thinking someone meant to hurt us when they might have been projecting their own pain. These distortions cloud our judgment, intensify our reactions, and keep us stuck in emotional loops. There's also a powerful concept from neuroscience, emotional contagion. It's the idea that emotions, especially anger, are contagious. The brain mirrors the emotional state of others through mirror neurons. So, if someone around you is agitated, your nervous system is likely to react unless you've developed self-regulation. Most of us react instinctively, but self-mastery means noticing the emotion, naming it, and choosing your response. That's how the cycle is broken. But the deepest insight of all might be this. We don't get triggered by people who mean nothing to us. If a stranger on the street insults you, it might sting. But if your parent, your partner, or your friend makes a similar comment, it cuts deep. Why? Because emotional pain is not about the words. It's about what they represent. The unmet need, the unhealed wound. The story we've been telling ourselves since childhood. And so the work begins not on changing the world or silencing every offensive person, but on understanding ourselves, on recognizing that emotional reactivity is not a flaw, it's a signal, a compass. Okay. It points us to the places where our healing still lives. The more conscious you become, the less others control you, not because the world changes, but because you do. When we don't understand the source of our anger, when we continue to react impulsively to others without reflection, the consequences ripple far beyond a single moment. They shape the entire architecture of our inner world. And more often than not, we don't realize we've built a prison with our own hands. Consider this. Every time we allow someone to provoke us, we hand them power over our emotional state. That power accumulates day by day until we're no longer living from within, we're merely reacting. The coworker who always takes credit for your work, the partner who knows just the right words to unsettle you, the friend who gives backhanded compliments. They become silent puppeteers of your inner world, and you, unknowingly, become their puppet. But this isn't just about occasional irritation. Chronic emotional reactivity breeds deeper suffering. Over time, unresolved anger hardens into resentment. And resentment is like rust on the soul. It eats away at your peace, your joy, your focus. You may still smile, work, perform, but there is a constant undertone of bitterness. Life starts to feel heavier. Relationships become tense. You don't trust others easily because you're always anticipating offense. You withdraw or you lash out. Either way, your emotional energy gets hijacked, and with it, your creativity, your clarity, your confidence. On a personal level, this can erode your identity. You begin to define yourself by what you're against rather than who you are. You become the person who hates liars or the one who can't stand fake people. It feels righteous at first, like you have strong boundaries, but in reality, you're being shaped by what you dislike, not what you love. And that is a subtle but dangerous form of self-abandonment. In relationships, this emotional volatility can be devastating. Partners become adversaries. Friendships grow cold. Children grow up walking on eggshells, learning to suppress their own feelings so they don't awaken yours. You may still love them deeply, but your inability to regulate your own emotions turns you into someone unpredictable, even unsafe. The wound gets passed on generation after generation. And in society, this dynamic fuels division. We see it everywhere in politics, religion, online debates. People don't listen to each other anymore. They react, they assume, they cancel, because we've normalized the belief that if someone offends us, they must be wrong and we must retaliate. But this is not strength. It is emotional immaturity, masked as moral superiority. Carl Jung warned of this. He saw that when the individual fails to confront their shadow, the collective becomes infected with it. Wars are not started by people who have made peace with themselves. They're started by wounded egos in search of external enemies. This is why inner work is not just personal, it's political. Your ability to remain calm in the face of offense is not just for your own peace. It is your contribution to a more conscious, less reactive world. To be clear, this doesn't mean tolerating abuse or staying silent in the face of injustice. Boundaries matter, but there is a profound difference between setting a boundary from a place of clarity and reacting from a place of pain. One is rooted in power, the other in fear. The cost of not mastering this is high, and yet the reward for doing so is immense. Freedom, not the kind you shout about, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that lets you walk through a storm without becoming one. Now that we've explored the psychological roots and the devastating costs of unchecked emotional reactivity, the question becomes, how do we stop? How do we reclaim our peace in a world that seems determined to take it from us? Carl Jung didn't offer quick fixes. His path wasn't about emotional suppression or shallow positivity. He believed in something far more radical: integration, becoming whole. Not perfect, not polished whole. That means we must begin with ourselves, not by silencing the emotion, but by listening to it. The first practical tool is shadow work. This involves paying close attention to the people who provoke you and asking, what is it about them that unsettles me? Then ask, is there a part of me, no matter how small, that also carries this trait? The goal isn't to shame yourself. The goal is to recognize that you are human, multifaceted, and capable of the same emotions you judge in others. This realization doesn't weaken you, it humbles you. And in that humility, you stop overreacting. You stop needing to prove you're better than anyone else. Next is emotional labeling, a technique from mindfulness and CBT. When you feel triggered, pause and name the emotional gore: insecurity, rejection, embarrassment. Research shows that naming your emotion reduces its intensity by activating the rational parts of your brain. Instead of "I'm furious," try "I'm feeling disrespected." That small shift creates space between you and your emotion, allowing you to respond instead of react. Another essential tool is journaling, specifically emotional journaling. Each day, reflect on moments where someone bothered you. Write down what happened, how it made you feel, and what deeper story might be fueling that reaction. Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll notice recurring wounds, perhaps a need to be respected, seen, or valued. With awareness, those wounds stop controlling you. You begin to heal. Incorporate Stoic practice into your mornings. One simple method is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before you start your day, mentally rehearse possible irritations. Someone will cut you off in traffic. A colleague will interrupt you. A stranger may be rude. Prepare for it not to become cynical, but so you are not caught off guard. When it happens, you'll smile, not because you enjoy it, but because you expected it. You trained for this. You can also draw from Sufi wisdom, where one is taught to pause and recite before reacting. When angry, breathe deeply and say internally, "This, too, is from God." Whether or not you believe in the divine, the point is still profound. What if this annoyance was meant for you? What if it was not a punishment, but a lesson? This mindset reframes pain into growth. And finally, learn the sacred art of not responding. Not everything requires your opinion, your defense, your energy. Silence can be an act of power. In fact, Jung once observed that silence is often the best answer to someone projecting their own chaos onto you. By not reacting, you denied their projection a place to land. This is a daily practice, not a final destination. You won't always get it right. Some days you'll slip, and that's okay. The point isn't to be invincible, it's to be intentional. Little by little, as you commit to these tools, you'll notice a shift. The same people will say the same things, but your response will change. And that's when you'll know the power has come home to you. In the end, it's a journey of not being bothered or angered by others. It isn't about becoming untouchably. It's about becoming aware. It's not about building walls around your heart, but cultivating the kind of presence that doesn't collapse in the face of provocation. Carl Jung didn't tell us to suppress our emotions. He told us to understand them, to meet our inner chaos with curiosity, not judgment. And when we begin to do that, something remarkable happens. We stop living in constant reaction. We stop feeling like victims of other people's moods, words, or behaviors. We begin to respond from a deeper place, one that is rooted in clarity rather than woundedness. That's not detachment. That's maturity. And in this world, maturity is a revolutionary act. So often, we believe that peace will come when the world changes, when that difficult person apologizes, when the coworker gets fired, when the toxic friend disappears. True peace comes when you change, when your relationship to your own inner world becomes so strong, so honest, so integrated, that no one else's behavior has the power to steal your equilibrium. This work isn't glamorous. No one will see you doing it. There will be no applause for the days you choose not to react, the moments you breathe instead of rage, the nights you write in your journal instead of sending that angry text. But that is the work of the soul, quiet, steady, sacred, and perhaps most humbling of all. When you begin to do this work, when you truly begin to own your anger, your reactions, your projections, see the world differently. You'll see the ones who lash out, not as enemies, but as unconscious versions of yourself. You'll realize most people aren't trying to hurt you, they're just hurting. And you'll meet them not with contempt, but with compassion, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because when you no longer need others to behave a certain way for you to feel peace, you're finally free. If this message resonated with you, if something stirred within you as you listened to us, you're not alone. We're all walking this path together, slowly learning how to reclaim our minds, our hearts, and our peace from a world that constantly tries to steal it. This channel is here for that journey. A space not for surface level motivation, but for deep transformation. For those who want to understand, not just cope, but those who are ready to meet themselves fully, shadow and all. So if you're someone who seeks emotional mastery, self-awareness, psychological strength, not to dominate others, but to become the calm in the storm, then you're in the right place. Here, we explore the ancient wisdom of the past, the depth of Jungian psychology, the practical tools of today to help you become who you were always meant to be. Not reactive, but rooted, not bitter, but whole. Subscribe if you haven't already, not just for more videos, but to stay connected to a deeper rhythm of growth. Here, we speak to the part of you that's tired of pretending, tired of performing, and ready to be real. Every video is crafted to challenge your mind, awaken your spirit, and bring you back home to yourself. And as you go forward, remember, the world will not stop being chaotic. People will still be careless, rude, aggressive, or unaware. But the power they once held over you, that belongs to you now. Danny, every time you choose to pause instead of react, to reflect instead of rage, you reclaim a little more of your soul. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself not, what's wrong with them, but what's still unhealed in me? That question could change everything.